Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven rings with the harmonies of liberties. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won.
The University of Michigan is located on the territory of the Anishinaabe people. The Ann Arbor campus resides on land ceded through the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Additionally, in 1817, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations made the largest single land transfer to the University of Michigan, ceded through the Treaty of Fort Meigs, with the agreement that their children would be educated in perpetuity. We assert the sovereignty of tribal lands and acknowledge the painful historical and ongoing genocide, forced assimilation, and displacement of Native communities in establishing the university. We affirm contemporary and ancestral Anishinaabe ties to this land, the profound contributions of Native American people to this institution, and the university's commitment to educating the children of Native ancestors. We further recognize that whether you are on campus in Ann Arbor or elsewhere in the United States, we stand on land developed at the often fatal expense of forcefully enslaved Black people. We acknowledge that much of this country, including its culture, economic growth, and development, has been made possible by the labor of enslaved Africans and their descendants who suffered the horror of the transatlantic trafficking, chattel slavery, and dehumanization through segregation and Jim Crow laws. We remember those who did not survive the Middle Passage, those who were beaten and lynched, and those who are still suffering while fighting for their freedom. We are indebted to their labor and unwilling sacrifice and acknowledge the violence throughout the generations and the resulting impact and generational trauma still felt today. The fights against settler colonialism and anti-Blackness will always be inextricably linked to the land, to the collective, and to the ancestors. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you. Now it is my honor to introduce Dr. Tabby Chavis, who is the Vice Provost for Equity and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer at the University of Michigan. She is also a Professor of Education and Professor of Psychology. Dr. Chavis attended the University of Virginia, where she received her bachelor's degree and went on to earn a PhD in community psychology. Following her graduate work, Dr. Chavis entered the University of Michigan as an assistant professor and moved up the ranks to professor. Dr. Chavis has held leadership roles at the department, college, and central administration levels during her almost 24 years here at U of M. Most recently, she was the director of the National Center for Institutional Diversity and an associate dean for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. Prior to that, Dr. Chavis served as an Associate Vice President for Research, Associate Dean for Academic Programs and Initiatives in the Rackham Graduate School, and Chair of the Combined Program in Education and Psychology. Dr. Chavis' expertise and research activities center around social identity development among Black adolescents and young adults, achievement motivation processes among ethnic minority students, and the measurement and impacts of diversity climates at secondary and higher education settings and implications for students' academic, social, and psychological adjustment. In collaboration with a number of her graduate student and postdoctoral mentees, she has published extensively in these areas. Dr. Tabby Chavis.
Thank you, Irene. Greetings and good morning. Okay, there we go. And welcome to the University of Michigan's annual Juneteenth Symposium. As Irene mentioned, I'm Tabby Chavis, Vice Provost for Equity and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer and Professor of Psychology and Education here at the University of Michigan. And even more than that, I am honored to be with you today for your participation in this year's commemoration of Juneteenth. This year's symposium features a wonderful combination of artists, scholars, practitioners, community members, and students. Please join me first in congratulating the Planning Committee and Director Rachel Dawson of the Office of Multicultural Academic Initiatives, or AOAME as we affectionately call it, for their exceptional work in organizing this event. Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day, and Emancipation Day, was relatively recently recognized as a federal holiday in 2021. This holiday marks the day in 1865 when the Union Army arrived in Galveston, Texas, and proclaimed that enslaved people were free, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. And it was last year that Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed legislation making Juneteenth an official state holiday in the state of Michigan. While Juneteenth has increasingly come to be celebrated throughout the United States, and although Juneteenth acknowledges the end of slavery, it's important to remember that the conditions reflecting the legacy of slavery, such as Jim Crow laws, segregation, and the denial of civil rights, continue to make impacts on our communities and society to this day. In this year's symposium, we will engage this history and present through featuring a rich array of artistic expressions in the visual arts, music, dance, and literature. The arts have long been a powerful tool of activism, bridging language and cultural barriers, creating spaces for reflection, innovation, and sometimes revolution. As we immerse ourselves in performances and exhibitions, let us be moved not only by the artistry, but also by powerful messages of hope, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of progress that moves us further toward freedom and liberation. Speaking of progress, this symposium is especially timely and significant in this current social political context and moment, where we are witnessing organized and well-funded efforts, locally and nationally, to roll back any progress that we've made related to education access, healthcare access, voting rights, and free speech, just to name a few areas. And a key strategy in these regressive efforts is denying and erasing history. For instance, through attempts to ban the teaching of African American history in K-12 schools based on arguments that it lacks educational value or that it indoctrinates a, quote, too woke society. Now more than ever, understanding and keeping alive histories such as Juneteenth is critical. As a scholar who's devoted my career to studying and teaching about the positive identity development and resilience of Black adolescents, achievement motivation processes among students of color, and the ways that interpersonal and systemic racism impact students academically and socially, and as a Black woman in this society, I have unfortunately had firsthand experiences in dealing with individuals and broader sociopolitical forces that seek to suppress our light, make us question our work and our excellence. In addition, the progress that we've been making in institutions of higher education toward more diverse, equitable, inclusive settings is under particular attack. We are well aware that states across the country have pared down or eliminated anything that is called diversity, equity, or inclusion, or DEI, within colleges and universities, which means eliminating structures and resources that have supported Black communities' educational access and social mobility, along with that of many historically marginalized communities. And what is particularly troubling is that in this anti-DEI movement is that the rationale being used to attack DEI efforts is based on zero evidence, only propaganda and lies. Even with more than 3 decades, even more than that actually, of research and evidence that supports the value and benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion for increasing excellence, some people have positioned DEI as the root cause of everything that ails our society, from plane doors being ripped off, to boats crashing into bridges, to the economic and cultural failings of our education system, to the many centuries-old problem of anti-Semitism. DEI is also blamed for both suppressing free speech and enabling too many people, or rather the wrong people, to have free speech rights. These attacks also seek to stoke fears and divisions across our religious, racial, and cultural communities, and are driven by misinformation or goals of political gain rather than on any democratic principles or values. And these attacks are also deeply grounded in anti-Blackness. And unfortunately, the campaign of anti-DEI attack and misinformation has been effective in many ways so far, but it has not defeated and will not defeat us. So at times, we may be hard-pressed on every side, but we are not crushed, perplexed but not in despair, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. And regardless of your spiritual or religious orientation, I thought these words from 2 Corinthians were appropriate. Because yes, the current forces at play are disheartening, but these forces have been a part of our history. And our history shows us that a collective community voice and activism makes a difference. The fact that Juneteenth is now recognized at the federal and state levels is evidence of the importance and impact of community mobilization. What is celebrated on Juneteenth is not just freedom. It is a stark reminder of the precarious nature of freedom. Freedom that was fought for, freedom that we're still fighting for, and that we must vigilantly attend to, nurture, and never ever take for granted. The fight for our freedoms is never finished. It requires our persistent effort, our strategic action, and community activation to overcome opposition and resistance to our full and equitable participation in society. So, with that preaching aside, I hope that you are as ready as I am for what I know will be an excellent symposium. In addition to our fantastic panel discussions, our 2024 keynote address will feature Loretta J. Ross, a committed activist, public intellectual, scholar, 2022 recipient of the National MacArthur Foundation Genius Award, and associate professor at Smith College. The symposium will culminate with a film festival and Juneteenth activities at the Kids Zone tent, part of the Ann Arbor Top of the Park annual celebration. So please take advantage of as many of these activities as you can. Before I conclude, please join me in thanking not only OAME, but the team of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the Women of Color Task Force, and the Alumni Association for their efforts in putting together and supporting this year's symposium. And on behalf of the entire university community, I would like to welcome all of you who have joined us here in person, as well as those joining us virtually. Now, it is my privilege to share with you a video from the BAM, or Black Action Movement, Activism Tour. The tour was developed by OAME in partnership with the Black Student Union, Multi-Ethnic Student Association, Comprehensive Studies Program, and Trotter Multicultural Center. The tour will be offered to prospective students interested in the traditions of activism on our campus, as well as our DEI work. The tour can be offered live or virtually and includes videos and tours of the partnering group's facilities. After the video, we will get to hear about the ongoing activism from our Black students on campus from Nicholas Love. Nicholas, pronouns he, him, is a rising senior in the College of Literature, Science, and Arts, LS&A, majoring in psychology with minors in political science and community action and social change. Also, yay. Nicholas is deeply passionate about race and ethnicity and how these factors influence a person's college experience and sense of community within higher education institutions. He actively contributes to campus life as a SEBA, or historian for the Black Student Union, as a core for the HERE Earning a Destiny Through Honesty, Eagerness, and Determination of Self, or HEADS organization, a peer facilitator in the University Research Opportunities Program, and a freelance photographer, Love J Photos. In other words, a real slacker, right? With that, again, welcome and have a wonderful symposium.
In January of 1970, Black students became impatient with the university's unwillingness to make institutional changes to increase diversity and provide academic, financial, and social support for students of color, particularly Black students, who only made up 3.8% of students on campus. The Black Student Union, Black Law Students Association, Association of Black Social Work Students, and Black students from the Medical School and Psychology Department crafted a list of demands to present the Board of Regents, the university's governing body. Together, they called themselves the Black Action Movement, or BAM. Focused on getting the university to set an institutional goal of 10% Black enrollment, the first Black Action Movement garnered hundreds of supporters that effectively led to a university shutdown for 11 days. And shutdown meant shut down. University service workers stopped working, graduate students stopped teaching, and nearly 50% of LSA classes were canceled. After meeting with the Board of Regents, faculty, and the university president, the strike ended in late March and the BAM negotiating team emerged victoriously. The team secured a university commitment from the Regents to achieve 10% Black enrollment by the fall of 1973. Every school and college agreed to contribute the necessary funds to accomplish the goal, and the president conceded to a host of other demands like creating a Black Studies program. Noticeably absent from the concessions was the establishment of a Black Student Center. To assist with the recruitment and retention of Black students, the Coalition for the Use of Learning Skills, or COLS, was extended under the Opportunity Awards program in 1970 as a direct response to BAM 1. These programs provided scholarships, intensive courses, tutoring, and study groups. In 1983, both programs were consolidated into one program, the Comprehensive Studies Program. Today, CSP is a diverse U of M learning community providing holistic academic and personal support through a growing multidisciplinary curriculum to over 3,000 students. Although the university regents were not willing to fund a Black-focused student center, there was no rule against building one and finding someone else to pay for it. In 1971, a former BAM member, Dr. Charles C. Kidd, secured a grant to purchase a building on campus while serving as Assistant Vice President for Student Services. Students returned from the summer break in 1971 to a new Black Student Center, named after William Monroe Trotter, a late 19th and early 20th century Black civil rights activist. The Trotter House contained counselors for Black students, event spaces for Black organizations, and enrichment opportunities to enhance the Black student experience. 6 months later, the building was destroyed by fire and rebuilt on the other side of campus in 1972. In 1983, the building was renamed the Trotter Multicultural Center. At the same time as Trotter's initial founding back in 1971, the Office of Student Services reorganized into the Office of Special Services and Programs, or OSSP. OSSP was a central area for communities of color at the University of Michigan, housing staff advocates that served various racial and ethnic groups. With a newly formed constituency services area, OSSP included a Black student advocate who would work primarily with Black students. OSSP would eventually become the Office of Multi-Ethnic Student Affairs. In different university spaces, Black students found people eager to improve the experiences of Black students. However, there was still quite a bit of work that needed to be done. In February of 1975, Black students reflected on the broken promises of the university. The university still had not reached 10% Black enrollment despite promising to do so by the fall of 1973. On top of that, the denial of a Black woman for a deanship in the College of Literature, Science, and Arts, the rejection of a proposal for an African American history learning community, and the expulsion of a Black nursing student from the university left Black students feeling fed up. Other communities of color were also growing frustrated. Chicano and Native American students wanted more university support and to have increased enrollment of students from their communities. Asian American students were required to prove their disadvantaged status to qualify for programs that would help them to succeed at Michigan. Out of this collective frustration, the Third World Coalition Council was born. Leaders from different identity-based student organizations united to challenge the university, led by members of the Black United Front. The coalition launched a sit-in at the U of M Fleming Administration Building, demanding increased support for their concerns. However, the sit-in did not last long, nor did it fully achieve what it set out to do. The university president did agree to continue negotiations with the coalition and grant a fair hearing to the previously expelled Black nursing student. After 60 hours, the students ended the sit-in. The effort was later deemed Black Action Movement 2, but it was neither as large nor as impactful as BAM 1. This movement was, however, a crucial moment in the history and lineage of Black student activism at Michigan. In January of 1987, Black students once again were organizing themselves to combat and protest racist events on campus. Protests emerged after a group of Black women were given a fake hunting notice announcing open season on Black people. Additionally, a student-run radio show ran a segment where a caller made racist jokes while the host played laugh tracks. Two groups emerged following these events: the United Coalition Against Racism, or UCAR, and the Black Action Movement 3, or BAM 3. While UCAR's demands were focused toward minority students, BAM 3 presented a list of demands specific to Black students. One of those demands was for the creation of an Office of Minority Affairs. When the sitting university president failed to meet any of UCAR's demands, a prolonged struggle between student activists and the university emerged. Following a sit-in, students realized they had to act faster and were time-pressed to get the university to meet their demands. So UCAR invited Reverend Jesse Jackson to mediate negotiations between themselves and the university. In late March 1987, after hours of negotiations, Jackson and the administrators agreed to 6 concessions, later referred to as the 6-point plan. One of those concessions was the creation of an Office of Minority Affairs. The office was tasked with assisting in recruiting and retaining minority students, faculty, and staff. Less than a decade later, the Office of Minority Affairs would change its name to the Office of Academic Multicultural Initiatives, also known as OWAMI.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicholas Love, and I am incredibly honored today and excited to speak to you all on behalf of the Black Student Union and as a current SEBA on the shoulders of those who have come before me and all of those who will come after me, and to continue the work in the mission of creating a better and safer and stronger community for Black students here at the University of Michigan. A question I always get asked about my position as SEBA, because they've never heard of it, is what is it? Like, what does the role entail? And to keep it brief, it's almost like a historian. It's to learn our past and to teach and influence the actions of the present to ensure the prosperity of our future. SEBA is rooted in African spirituality and traditions to guide us in our path to make sure that our EBOR stays level-headed, focused, and most importantly, as we move through our academic year, focused on our mission. In celebration of Juneteenth, it's always important to celebrate the little wins along the way. June 19th, 1865, or colloquially as we know it today as Juneteenth, stands as a marker in time of the liberation of enslaved people in the U.S. South, just as previous Black action movements and newer times of resistance stand as markers in time as Black students fight for equality here at the University of Michigan. Although today I'll only briefly be talking about 3 markers in time about Black student activism today, it would be remiss not to mention the numerous times and the groundwork that students have played in student activism, specifically students of color and Black activism here at the university, and actions that the BSU has taken, including UCAR, the Tower Takeover, Divestment for Humanity in South Africa, Students of Color Coalition, and a host of other displays of student activism that the work doesn't go unnoticed. In 2023, the Black Student Union started a project in an attempt to collect and display history of Black students here at the University of Michigan and Black student activism, so that the transient nature of college students and how that the process goes doesn't go unnoticed to display our history at the university. And I'm proud to introduce an early display and draft of the Black Archives to paint a story of Black student experiences since 1987. Today on the screen shows an early draft of what the Black Archives does look like, including a lot of different projects, including Black Trailblazers, starting from the first African-American students to be at the University of Michigan, early coalition work, all the way up until today, which we'll be focused on, including the hashtag BBUM, hashtag Occupy Trotter, and the More Than 4-Point platform. Starting in 2013 with hashtag BBUM, in 2013, it was a very racially divisive time in the entire United States of America, including here at the University of Michigan. The recent re-election of President Barack Obama, the aftermath effects of the killing of Trayvon Martin, and the establishment of the Black Lives Matter movement. Here on campus, racial incidents were high, with racial firing at the West Quad dormitories on Black student dorms, and as well as on individualized Black student actual doors in their dormitories. Black enrollment was down by almost a third, and multiple accounts of cultural appropriation happening during the Halloween time with blackface. In 2013, in November, Theta Xi, a fraternity here on campus, decided to host or promote a party titled World Star Hip Hop Presents Hood Ratchet Thursdays. Extended to rappers, twerkers, gangsters, no bloods allowed, thugs, basketball players, and at the bottom, I hope you can see the rest. Black students and community members were outraged by the party that was going to take place and took to Twitter and Facebook, condemning the party that turned students into sharing their experiences about their experiences of being Black students here at the University of Michigan. The hashtag went viral across Twitter and Facebook, garnering tons of attention and pressure on the university and administration. The Black Student Union released 7 demands, with the main focus being the creation of the Trotter Multicultural Center on Central Campus. A few of these tweets are on the board now, as well as callbacks from our More Than 4 platform about hearing about students and their experiences about being Black here at the University of Michigan. From BBUM's demands that gathered a lot of attention, 7 of these demands were increased budget, an affordable campus housing, a new Trotter Center that was actually located on Central Campus, race and ethnicity requirements throughout all schools and colleges throughout the university, emergency scholarships for Black students, increased exposure for all documents in the Bentley Historical Library, who we have greatly been able to work with in the creation of this database, an increase in Black representation within the actual college, to increase to 10%. And that main focus being Trotter Multicultural Center, that in the following months and years allow for the actual plans to be documented to then have the actual building that you see now today. Following BBUM, we've had the ability to congregate in the space, creating community within a lot of Black organizations, and as well as other multi-ethnic organizations as well, in which we've allowed and had the ability to create that beautiful community that we can almost see today. But a lot of that has also had a little bit of challenges. In 2022, the hashtag Occupy Trotter started. On the screen right now is a lot of Polaroid pictures that were taken during the actual sit-in, as we would call it today, of Black students congregating in the space. During this time, a graduate student by the name of Byron Brooks, he's colloquially known as Mo Soul, as people on campus know him, he released a statement regarding the attention for the University of Michigan's administration to have conversations around white people taking up space in Trotter that was meant for Black students and minority students to have a safe space on campus. An op-ed then eventually came out during the Michigan Daily saying that his comments were racist, inherently racist, and most importantly, they didn't fit the university's guidelines of what it meant to be a University of Michigan student. Following this was a lot of conversations around what it meant to be a Black student here at the University of Michigan again, but also what it meant to have Trotter as a space in general. For me, Trotter has been a space where I can go, I can feel safe, and I can be around with my friends. I don't have to feel that pressure of being a student and always being looked at. And I think a lot of the students you would ask today can also say the same. And so an action that particularly students at the time in 2022 in that winter decided was to occupy the space. Every single day you would have over 150 to 200 students in Trotter, just chilling, playing spades, watching movies, movie nights, game nights, whatever, from as soon as it opened up at 8 a.m. to midnight, even staying after midnight if Trotter staff allowed. So it was a great space and a great time to provide that space, but also a time to have that conversation about what it meant to have creative spaces and a space for students of color to actually sit and have conversations and congregate together as community, and an ability to have a counter space at the University of Michigan. Racial incidents like this are just not a one-off thing that then we have this little, I wouldn't say movement as you call it, but these happen all the time. And one thing that the Black Student Union wanted to do was create a platform and actually work with administration. We oftentimes wait for an actual event to happen where we then have an entire movement, as you would call it, and then we have these conversations with administrations, demands, but we really wanted to have a conversation with administration. Let's sit down and have a continued talk with administration on the things that we're experiencing as Black students at the university so we can try to improve on some of these things. Out of that came the More Than Four platform. November 1st, 2022, the Black Student Union released its political platform, More Than Four. The goal was to publicly address the changes that needed to be made at the university and to create this open and working relationship with the University of Michigan. The 4 tenets of the More Than Four platform included increasing Black enrollment, not just creating an actual marker of 10%, which we would love to still get to, but just to increase Black enrollment and the actual actions that the university could take to get there. Explicitly combating anti-Blackness as a university, rectifying a lot of the structural flaws within DEI and a lot of their unstructured and divisive programs that they have, and creating a more centralized actions, and then meaningful engagement and social responsibility for K through 12 education. It doesn't just happen once you get to college and creating a safe space here. How can we continue to invest in K through 12 education before we get there? There was an actual release day that we happened on the DIAG in 2022 on the Hatchet Graduate Library steps that you can see from the Twitter here, in which we had a 17-minute press release window addressing the statements that we had during the 4-point platform. 24 hours after that, we had a flyering event where posters were put up all over campus. Less than 24 hours later, a lot of those flyers are ripped and taken down all over campus, which just goes to show one of our tenets of anti-Blackness in actual show here at the University of Michigan. After the actions of November 1st and following the actual flyering, it prompted administration to quickly respond about like what they wanted to do and having actual conversations. And so the actual BSU e-board at the time decided to have an actual sit-in and talking about how the university resists to change, specifically regarding Black student activism here at the university. One of those being just delay, and because of the transient nature of students in general. You're in and out in 4 or 5 and things can just travel by the wayside. One of the tactics used by the university. And so how can we as the Black Student Union and creating an active conversations and continuing these conversations, being able to continue the conversation into actual results. And so we had a lot of summer work, and starting in the actual summer groups and working groups to be able to work on these 4 tenets with members of the BSU executive boards in 2022 and also 2023, being able to work with administrators and being able to work on some of the tenets of our platform, which is being able to provide great work and stability throughout that. But if you see it here at the bottom, it kind of tails off there at summer work. It's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today is because our work continues. The work that we did without the working groups were extremely important, but it kind of tailed off throughout the entire academic year. Understanding things get busy, but we want to continue these conversations and understanding that we are the Black Student Union, and the nature of the Black Student Union is in action movements and being out there on the front lines, and we do not shy away from our grounds as history. And so understanding that as we continue to create this working relationship, and we want to continue to create and work with administration, and that stalls have happened throughout this academic year, that we will continue to push in our goal and our mission to creating this. And so today I just showed you a little bit about what we've done since the third action movement and for BAM 3, and showing that our work continues to go on. One thing that this archival project is not only about is just showing the history of what Black students here at the university have done, as well as our continued activism, but it also serves as a pathway for students to be able to get involved. I'm not sure if it'll actually show on the actual screen right at now in this moment. Yeah, don't have permission for here. But there's actually a Black organization for students to be able to find Black organizations listed for their different social academic needs, for their, if they want to join a fraternity or sorority, if they want to be able to get into academic work, creative work, and outlets, we also have that available as well. And so although this is an early draft, we are continuing to work on this, and we would love your support in any way, whether it's your actual testimonies being Black students here at the university, to add it to photographs. We're continuing to gather more and more information on this, so we would love your help for this. And so I just want to say thank you for that, and being able to be a part of this history. And so every year, we have hundreds of Black students and leaders and student leaders that help to continue to create unforgettable and positive experiences for Black students, with over 45 Black student organizations currently active and making positive change here on campus. Their impact on creating their college experience at the expense of the university's mission and lack of support happens and continues because of people that are dedicated to seeing our success and prosperity. We, as the Black Student Union, emphasize the importance of staying together and strengthening our community and digging deeper into our mission this upcoming year of unification and strength. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce our Juneteenth opening keynote. Loretta J. Ross is an activist, public intellectual, scholar, the 2022 recipient of the MacArthur Foundation Genius Award, and an associate professor of Smith College. She has a passion for innovation, creative imagining about global human rights and social justice issues, and started her career in activism and social change in the 1970s. In 1978, she was the third executive director for the DC Rape Crisis Center, the first rape crisis center in the country. This was her entry point into the women's movement, where she learned about women's human rights, reproductive justice, white supremacy, and women of color organizing. Through her organizing, she helped launch the movement to end violence against women that has evolved into today's #MeToo movement. Throughout her 50-year career, she has worked with the National Football League's Player Association, the National Organization for Women, the National Black Women's Health Project, the Center for Democratic Renewal, the National Center for Human Rights Education, and Sister Song Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. Loretta retired as an organizer in 2012 to teach and follow her passion to educate. In 1996, she founded the first center in the United States to innovate creative human rights education for all students, transforming social justice issues to be more collaborative and less divisive. In her work, Calling in the Calling Out Culture, she transforms how people can overcome political differences to use empathy and respect to guide difficult conversations. In 2023, Loretta was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. It's now my pleasure to introduce Loretta J. Ross.
Yep. Okay. Give me a minute to get a little settled. How y'all doing? I am so sorry that the podium is blocking my view of everybody to the left of the stage, but we will work it out, right? I would invite those of you who want to see to come sit in all these empty seats in the middle. I mean, I promise I'm not going to call on you, spit on you, or throw water on you if you come and occupy some of these seats. Because I really would like to see people. And I imagine some people wouldn't mind seeing me. Not everybody, but a few people. All right, that's good, that's good. That's better. You know, it's kind of hard giving a speech to empty chairs. So I really appreciate you. Let's see, you see that thing? First of all, I'm very honored to have been chosen as your Juneteenth speaker. I teach at Smith College. Now I'm an associate professor. And the course that I teach is called White Supremacy in the Age of Trump. And I'm very proud to be at an institution that not only hired me because that was my course, but railroaded a tenure appointment as they hired me. And so I'm permanently ensconced in teaching about white supremacy. I don't actually do DEI work, which is fine because there's a lot of people doing DEI work and they're doing a great job with it. I do the work fighting white supremacy. You know, I'm not into the accidental racists, I'm into the on purpose ones, so to speak. And so I have the joy of teaching about fascism, sexism, anti-Semitism, transphobia, homophobia, xenophobia. I get a joy of teaching all of that stuff. And so the reason that I teach that course, maybe that'd be important to know, is that back in the 1990s, I was the only woman and the only Black person running an opposition research program on white supremacy for the organization called the Center for Democratic Renewal, formerly known as the National Anti-Klan Network. And back then, you know, starting in the early 1990s, I had tremendous trouble convincing people that the Klan and the neo-Nazi movement still posed a threat. Because they had elected Bill Clinton, everything's gonna be fine, it's all over with. So when I was asked to teach in 2015, and I watched Donald Trump come down that escalator, I'm like, oh, hell no. No, right? And so instead of teaching about reproductive justice, which I easily could have done, I've co-written 3 books on it, I teach about white supremacy. And one of the things that I am concerned about is how important it is to have a vision and a process for fighting white supremacy, because you just can't be defined by what you're against. You've got to be defined by what you believe in, what you're for. And not only that, you've got to have a process that welcomes people into the work instead of terrorizing them from the work, demotivating them. And so in that vein, I created something called the Calling In Culture, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. But first, I'll give you an idea. These are my books that I've written. The one on the far left, Calling In, is going to be published February 4th, 2025. I'm really excited about that. If you read the tagline, how to start making change with those you'd rather cancel. That's me to a T, because my eyes break every day looking at people. I'm one of those really judgmental people. And the judgmentalism happens before my brain catches up, you know? And I'm like, you really want to wear that today? Break, you know? You really want to eat that? Break, you know? So I teach about calling in because I have to call myself in so many times. But as you can see, I've also got books to my credit on reproductive justice because I was one of the 12 Black women who created the framework of reproductive justice. So maybe at some point I can come back and talk to you all about reproductive justice. By the way, speaking of the University of Michigan, I worked with a U of M, a medical school, on infusing reproductive justice and human rights principles into medical training. And right now, the people at that medical school are leading the country in getting reproductive justice and human rights principles into medical training around the country. It was very breathing. But this is something that U of Michigan should be very proud of, that you're setting new standards for how doctors and other healthcare providers are trained. One that prioritizes the human rights of people in the healthcare field versus attacks their human rights. Because there's really no logic in why we dehumanize people trying to give them training, making them work impossible hours, the student loan, all the mess. And then suddenly, the minute they graduate, they're supposed to rehumanize themselves so that they can provide what's called patient-centered care. Like, after you'd have messed over them like this, I'd be surprised they don't mess over their patients. Because, hurt people, in case you hadn't noticed and stuff. And so anyway, let me go on. Let me stop the commercial. But like I said, be proud, U of M. Y'all are changing what's happening across the country, even though you may not be aware of it. And I was reminded of it because I did a keynote for the American Medical Students Association a couple of weeks ago. And they said, and we have been trained by the University of Michigan Medical School. I was like, wow, that, something came full circle on me because I remember doing that training 4 or 5 years ago with U of M Medical School. So let's go. Let's talk about Juneteenth. Obviously, we are celebrating as America inches forward into its promise of democracy. I think I want to quote Barbara Jordan, who said, "We want an America as good as its promise." Because the America we got ain't working, not well, and certainly not for everyone. And every time we inch towards our democratic progress, we get a fierce backlash. So right now we're in a backlash moment. Now, I am particularly attached to the Juneteenth holiday because I was born and raised in Texas, right? So we took Juneteenth celebrations as routine, not out of the ordinary, and we celebrated the 4th of July, so it was like having 2 big barbecues within weeks of each other. We had no problem with that. But what we also have made sure to let people know, our families know, and our families would talk about the importance of Juneteenth and why we celebrated and stuff, was that it wasn't just the liberation of Black people, but it was the total brutality with which Black people at that time were treated. I mean, it's estimated that 2,500 Black people were killed once they learned about Juneteenth in Texas. They'd rather kill them than liberate them. This is what happened. And of course, growing up in San Antonio, Texas, we grew up with the story of the Alamo, the brave defenders, Sam Houston, et cetera, fighting against the Mexicans who tried to, I guess, invade America. No one told me that whole story had been reversed. Texas was Mexican territory that these settlers came in to take from Mexico. And one of the things that was compelling them, driving them, was the fact that Mexico had ended slavery in 1829. Right? And so all these white settlers came in to defend slavery. And so all the revered names of the Confederacy, Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, Stonewall Jackson, they first fought in Texas to defend slavery before they ended up leading the treasonous Confederacy that ended the Union. So we don't get taught this history. And of course, President Jackson, Andrew Jackson, led the white supremacist backlash to the 13th and 14th Amendments being in the Constitution. And that's probably why Donald Trump admires him so much, because he could be a racist without apology. But moving right along. So I would argue that the reason that we have so many attacks on teaching the true history of America is because the people who don't want that history taught want to repeat it. There's no secret about their agenda. They wish they could push our country back into the 19th century and act like we don't notice. But that ain't true. The thing that I know in my heart, and I hope you share with me in believing this, is that even though the people who are opposed to human rights think they're fighting us, they're wrong. We're fighting them, but they're not fighting us. What they're fighting are forces way beyond their ability to control, because they're fighting the truth, they're fighting history, they're fighting evidence, but most of all, they're fighting time. And I don't care how mad you are, you angry white men, you don't have the power to overcome truth, time, evidence, and history. I mean, unless you're H.G. Wells and got a time capsule somewhere. So I tend to see my side, the side for human rights, holding a winning hand. Because we got truth, time, evidence, and history on our side. So we could mess everything up and still have a winning hand. But we are messing everything up. And the reason we're messing everything up, in my mind, is to call out culture. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. But before I get to that, I want to share with you Sam Adler-Bell's quote. "The wounded are too preoccupied with their pain, and the unscathed too indifferent to it." This is what's happening. I find that the people who are least likely to have their human rights violated are the ones who do not want us to use the human rights framework. They're the skeptics, the critics, and the naysayers. I find the people who have the least in life need the most from human rights. So, having said that, let's talk about why we need a calling in culture. I think we need to hold people accountable for what they're doing, the harm that they're causing. Sometimes the harm is unintentional, but it doesn't matter, it still hurts. So we need to pursue accountability, but instead of pursuing it through anger, blaming, and shaming, I think we need to pursue it through love, justice, and respect for human rights. And we have to learn how to address harm without creating more harm. Oh, I should warn y'all, I do the world's worst PowerPoints. I want to put a dissertation on every page, and every expert in communication says, please don't show your PowerPoints, please leave it. But I can't help it, because I'm a visual learner. I learn through reading. Other people learn through play and art and music and stuff like that. I never watched a movie of a book I've read, for example. I'd rather read the book. But moving right along, so forgive me. But we have to figure out a way to address accountability, address the harm that people do without creating more harm. Yeah, because that is not the point of doing human rights work, is to get your equal opportunity to oppress somebody else. That's not the point. And so we're going to build this human rights society of inclusion. Of course, how we do the work is as important as the work that we do. Because how you do the work will determine who you bring along in that work, what the outcomes of that work will be, and maybe we'll resist doing what Frantz Fanon advised us with the oppressed becoming the oppressor. Because there's that tendency when all you know is brutality, when you get in charge, you're going to continue that brutality because you haven't unlearned how to resist hurting others. And so I think it requires self-reflection, self-correction. If we're going to disrupt our oppressive spaces, and you need these healing strategies for yourself and others. So I've talked a lot about human rights. So here's a graphic that talks about why do you need to know about your human rights right now. Then the next one, I'm gonna tell you what your human rights are. Because I ran a National Center for Human Rights Education, I never give a speech without teaching people what their human rights are. When I first founded the center in 1996, my team commissioned a survey of the American public, and it turned out that only 7% of the American public had ever heard of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's a shame that the people who are against human rights have succeeded in keeping it out of our educational system. And that's not an accident, by the way. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I'm gonna tell you about in a minute, was written from 1946 to 1948. The United States affirmed it on December 10th, 1948, which is why December 10th is always Human Rights Day. By the way, y'all need to have a Human Rights Day celebration, by the way. And yet, at that same time, Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, for whom Dulles Airport is named after, sent out an advisory memo to the president and said, we need to be careful about this human rights thing because we don't want our Negroes to get agitated. That's a direct quote. Basically, you had an administration saying, we are not going to embrace this same document we just affirmed in the international arena because we want to maintain Jim Crow segregation. They said it out loud. They didn't try to hide it. With that in mind, that's why basic human rights education has never, ever been widespread throughout the American educational system. Because people are afraid that if you know your rights, you might fight for them. What a radical idea is that, but we'll talk about that more. This graphic talks about how no matter what issue you work on, you're part of a universal human rights movement. So I do women's rights work. That's what I'm mostly known for. But that means as I work on women's rights, I can't do that work in a racist way without violating my own movement. If I work on trans rights, I can't work on trans rights in a misogynist way without violating my own movement. I can't work on civil rights in an ableist or xenophobic way without violating my own movement. So one of the things I want us to imagine ourselves as is whatever we're passionate about, see it as belonging to the human rights movement and framework. And so how you do the work will be as important as the work that you do, because I believe that calling in will be as important to the human rights movement in the 21st century as nonviolence was to the civil rights movement in the 20th. You know, a statement of our values, a statement of how we learn to turn to each other instead of on each other, in the words of Reverend Lowry. So having said all of that, wait, I'm gonna cheat. How many of you already know what 8 categories of human rights there are? Look around. I bet you there's a bunch of degrees in this room. I suspect. And so somehow you've managed to matriculate into the highest honors of the land and not know what your human rights are. I'm saying it's a conservative plot. It ain't your fault. So you're going to leave here knowing what your human rights are, and I hope that y'all seriously consider putting human rights education in everything you touch, because people need to know their rights in order to fight for them. That's what Juneteenth is about. People didn't know they were free, and that's why 2,500 Black people got killed for claiming their rights and stuff. And we can't betray that legacy by continuing our ignorance. So these are the 8 categories of human rights protections right now to which we're entitled. Civil rights, your right to be treated as an equal to anybody in society. I could argue that the disability rights movement is a human rights movement because they don't have universal access yet. The LGBT movement is a civil rights movement because they don't have simple equality yet. I mean, look at all the attacks that are taking place on trans people, what you can't read about queer people, all of that. But civil rights is only one category of human rights, because you also have political human rights. These are the rights that we mostly see in the US Bill of Rights, like freedom of speech, freedom to vote, though aren't you seeing that freedom to vote is being under constant attack right now? So even to the limited extent that we have political human rights, there's a backlash to that. Economic human rights. Do you know what's so amazing? That we have a right to have the economy managed in such a way that it meets people's needs. Damn. You'd think that that was a revolutionary act, but when you say it, they accuse you of being a communist. I'm like, wait a moment. How can you bail out Wall Street and not Main Street? I mean, what's up with that? Why are we rewarding corporations for outsourcing jobs to low-paying countries when we got a workforce here that needs those jobs? I mean, we're making economic decisions based on the 1% instead of the rest of us. Social human rights. Those are your human rights that are born out of your human needs. Think about it. If you're not able to get food for yourself or shelter for yourself, health care, education, all of those things, you're not going to be around long to protest your human rights. And I would argue that since education is a human right, that they have incentivized our colleges and universities not to teach about human rights, because they'd have to justify why you're going to charge me $70,000 a year for something that's should be free. They don't have an explanation for that, so it's best that you don't even know it, kind of thing. But let's also talk about education, because education offers a very clear way to talk about intersectionality. Every child has a human right to an education, right? You agree with that? Would you also agree that a blind child might need her books in Braille? She doesn't have special human rights, she has special needs that have to be attended to so that she can get to the same human rights as a sighted child. That's how you use intersectionality, to explore people's vulnerabilities that have to be attended to in order for them to get the same benefits as someone who doesn't have those vulnerabilities. Right now, the whole concept of intersectionality has just been reduced to identities. Like I'm supposed to worry about a Scottish bagpiper or something. I mean, really? I mean, unless there's a movement against Scottish bagpipes, I don't consider you a victim just because your shit sounds so bad. So, what's up, right? Anyway, we need to also understand cultural human rights. This is the right to practice the culture of our desire, to speak the language of our need, to get services in the language of our need. So maybe you don't understand, but every time you do anything in a language other than English, you are actually defending people's human rights. So even though you're doing the right thing, you may not know what you're doing when you do that thing. I think it's Foucault who said, everybody knows what they did, but they don't know what they did does. And it's an example of that, where you don't know that you're upholding people's human rights when you work on diversity, inclusion, and equality and equity. You're actually a human rights defender. Take that badge with pride. But freedom of religion is also part of cultural human rights. But as a feminist, I'm going to argue that freedom from religion is also a human right. Because I have the human right to not have your religion in my bedroom. I didn't invite you there. And so I think we'd make more headway in defense of women's rights if we call the people opposed to human rights violators, because that's what they are doing, right? Environmental rights, the right to have an environment managed in such a way that, we're not drinking poison water, eating genetically modified food without our consent or knowledge. You know how many Black communities have been built on landfills and toxic land? Those kind of things. Climate change, of course, is an environmental human rights issue. Developmental human rights is a little harder to explain because the global South used to be called the developing world. And while it was called the developing world, they demanded the human right to control their own natural resources. And so they got tired of saying, okay, so company can come here and take all our oil, take all our rubber, take all our diamonds, take all of our titanium, whatever, and then we just have to, take it. And so I think developmental human rights is probably behind most wars that the United States engages in, because we can't explain how our oil keeps getting under other people's sand. Like God just made a big geological boo-boo that our military must correct, obviously. But then we always disguise that kind of aggression. Oh, we're saving Afghan women. You couldn't even locate Afghanistan on a map. Right? Yet. That's the kind of brainwashing they do to the American public. And sexual rights, my favorite. These are rights demanded by the women's movement. Starting in the 1970s, the right to determine if and when we'll marry, if and when we'll have children, even the right to sexual pleasure, which is my favorite. And it works really well when you start talking about your human rights, and then you look at your partner and say, you ain't doing it right. You're a human rights violator. That gets their attention, like, oh, shit. But all jokes aside, everybody should know what their human rights are. So now I know, this audience knows that y'all know your human rights, right? But let's not stop there, because there's new human rights coming about. I think that digital rights is going to be the next most important category of human rights protection, because if you're not digitally connected right now, you don't have access to banking, healthcare, education, legal advice. I mean, all the things necessary that we take for granted. Think about how it looks on the other side of the digital divide, where people don't have that access. And then scientific rights, I think, is probably going to be the next category after that. Why should insecure billionaires be the only one who benefit from space travel as they build these big dicks to take them up, By the way, why does it always have to be dick-shaped? I mean, the Enterprise was not. I mean, the Enterprise seemed to fly pretty well without being shaped like that, so what? I mean, all jokes aside, But we need to know what our human rights are. So we're fighting for these rights. That's our goal. We have a vision of the world that includes everyone. And it takes into account your intersectional vulnerabilities so that you can have special needs and still get to the same human rights. It's a wonderful framework we've been gifted. and yet we don't know how to make it happen. So let's talk about how to make it happen. I didn't even know about the call out culture when it first started being used as a phrase. I actually got blindsided by it because my grandson wouldn't pick up the phone when grandma called because he just let it go to voicemail. And, that pissed me off. I mean, you're my only heir, boy. I got a lot of causes I can give my property to. You may want to put a special ring on your phone for grandma. Because I ain't your friend. I'm your grandma. And then he said, well, grandma, just get on Facebook. That's the best way to reach me. I got on Facebook and he migrated off to Tactic or whatever that stuff is. But I stayed on Facebook because it is a way for boomers like me to stay connected and pretend that we know what we're doing with social media. But I noticed how unbelievably mean people were on these social media sites. The only one I know is Facebook, so I assume it's all happening on Instagram and all the other things. And so when I asked young people in my life, what was going on? Why? I know people are saying things online they would not have the courage to say to someone's face. And this young person told me, oh, you mean the call out culture? I said, y'all named it? She said, oh, yeah. I said, well, what are y'all doing about it? She shrugged and walked away like I was questioning gravity. And so that didn't sit well with me. I knew we could do something about it. In my career, I have deprogrammed white supremacists. I told you about my opposition research job. I've had very uncomfortable conversations with the most unlikely people. And I found not only that it was possible, but I found it was possible to achieve joy in doing the right thing. I taught Black feminist theory to men incarcerated for raping Black women just like me. Even as a rape survivor, I found myself able to have conversations with my nightmares. So, after all of that, you're gonna tell me you can't have a collegial conversation with someone who doesn't perfectly agree with you? What the fuck? So I started writing this book in 2016 that you just saw, Calling Out. But before then, I organized a student forum. That's how it was affecting young people. And I'm telling you, 100 students showed up on a Saturday morning without promise of food to talk about how the call-out culture was affecting them. It is making our young people afraid to say the wrong thing, to be put on the spotlight. They're hiding. I mean, most young people, they tell me, I think about getting called out every day, sometimes several times a day, because we've created this judgmental culture. So anyway, to answer this dilemma, I created something called the 5C continuum, which of course includes calling out, canceling, calling in, calling on, and calling it off. And I'll explain these in more detail. Calling out is when you publicly demand that someone be held accountable for something they've done or said. Now, the most important part of that sentence is that you did so publicly, because you could have DM'd them, done it privately. You could have called them up and say, did you really mean what you just said there? You could have, done a whole lot of other things. The fact that you did it publicly means that you wanted to be seen calling somebody else out. That's when the call out is more about power than purpose, because you're virtue signaling. And then, it's one thing when one person says something bad about you. It's another thing when they can get 10,000 people to say the same bad thing about you within hours. And once people's lives have been blown up by a call out like that, nothing is ever the same anymore. And so we need to be careful how we wield that weapon. But most people don't care because they only want to see how they have the power to affect somebody else's life, even people they don't even know. And then, the crowd gets tired and they move on to the next victim. So whatever power you thought you were getting, it's very ephemeral. It ain't gonna last until you escalate the call out. And then we got social media profiting from the escalation. Canceling is actually the ultimate call out. Because not only do you think somebody needs to be held accountable for what they've done, but you want to get them really good. So you want them to get fired or at least lose their reputation or their platform. You just want to exile them. But there's a philosophical problem with that. The prison industrial complex, that's what they do. They silence people, they segregate them, they exile them, and they dispose of them. Because nobody ever wants to hear from prisoners. We don't want to have an idea of what their lives are like or what happened to their life before they went to prison. We just want to know what they did. All right? And so there's a question of logic here. Why would we in the human rights movement call for the abolition of the carceral state and then at the same time use as tactics? That's a fundamental contradiction. But even worse, for me, because there's another problem. Why do we think we're going to achieve accountability when we are demonstrating that we can't be trusted, that we're going to brutalize you in the accountability process, and we really don't care about you or your human rights. We just care about having power over you. So we're asking people to trust us without proving that we're trustworthy. That doesn't make sense either. Now, calling in is not the opposite of calling out. You might think it was, but it's not, because it's also an accountability process. But instead of using anger, blaming, and shaming as your tactic of choice, you're going to use love, respect, and mercy as your tactic of choice. This actually is doable. I want to tell you a little story, because I know I'm running out of time, about a calling in training I did at Harvard. I was contracted to do a calling in training for their conflict resolution and negotiation unit. I probably mangled the name. I had a good time in the 60s, so I don't have to remember shit. Because I can always offer that as an excuse. Most of my audience they weren't even alive in the 60s. Hell, most of my audience wasn't alive in the 90s. Anyway, moving along. At Harvard, it was 7 attorneys that I was training. And this one Black woman, who was the one of the 7, because the only Black woman attorney there, she said, I hear you talk about this calling in thing, but that sounds suspiciously like respectability politics to me. Because why should I give a pass to all these people who keep committing microaggressions against me? I've been here 13 years and they still act like I don't belong. Yet I end up acting like the angry Black woman all the time. So then they don't want to talk to me. So it just keeps compounding itself. And I don't think calling in is designed to deal with my situation. So instead of answering her question directly, I just asked her a question. I said, who are you inside? She said, well, inside I think I'm filled with love. I said, so why aren't you using love as your accountability process instead of anger? Why are you occupying a role you didn't even want? The angry Black woman. Because that's what society was forced upon you? You could achieve the same accountability with love and not betray your inner integrity. That's what calling in offers you. An accountability process that doesn't betray your integrity and doesn't increase the harm that you call yourself trying to stop. Okay? Calling on was actually created by Sonia Renee Taylor. She's the author of the book, The Body is Not an Apology. Calling on recognizes that if you call people in or you call them out, you're giving them your time and attention. And sometimes you just want to say, talk to the hand. Because you ain't feeling like you want to give somebody that time and attention. But you can call on them to do better. In other words, I'll talk about it in more detail, but I love the way that it gives you a chance to set a boundary. I'll tell you another story from my training. I teach through story, so. I teach calling in techniques online, by the way. And I invite y'all to consider joining my next class that starts on July 23rd. Now, it's very expensive, so I'm not sure if you can afford it because each class is $5. The whole set is $20. And if you need a scholarship, let me know. But I call myself the Walmart of consciousness raising. And my website is my name, so you can find it pretty easily. So if you want more than what I can give you in this 1 hour, sign up for the class. And if you can't make the every Tuesday night class, if you pay the $20, you can get recordings of the class. So it can work for you. Moving right along. In my online class, I had a blind participant who said that every time I go to walk through a door or step up a step, some hand comes out of nowhere, places itself on my body to help me. And I go ballistic because it feels like an assault to me. I can't see it coming. And so I don't like the fact that I'm walking around either permanently afraid that someone's going to touch me without my permission or permanently enraged that I get touched without my permission. So what should I do? For this participant, I coined the phrase bad kindness, which is kindness done badly. And so what I counseled her to do, this is a calling on example, is number one, thank the person for trying to be kind. We want more kindness in the world. We don't want less, right? Second, then say, but I don't like people that I don't know or anticipate laying their hands on me. So you set your boundary, right? The third step is, but if you want to help a blind person in the future, here's some things you can do. So you make a plan for going forward. That's how you avoid the call out. You can thank them, you can set your boundary, and work with them to do better in the future. That's a calling on strategy, as opposed to calling in or calling out. Now, you may not, she ain't gonna stay there and be invested in whether they got that stuff, but at least she appreciated the kindness without punishing them for trying to be kind. Because otherwise she was that. Okay, moving right along. Calling it off is when you need to stop having this conversation with somebody. And there are a whole lot of times when we keep having conversations with people we need to just drop. And that it can be in person or online, right? Because you have no obligation to participate in a conversation where the person is lying, trolling you, cherry picking their facts, mocking you, more devoted to winning an argument than participating in a discussion. Let it go. Or like Bill Murray said, scrape them off. Y'all remember that? Oh, yeah. It was that movie about Christmas, or what was that movie that Bill Murray was in? Never mind. I told you I can't remember shit. But moving right along. So you can do it in person or online. You have no obligation to do that. So let's talk about how do you implement the 5 C's, because that's the next step. The first thing you have to do is learn that the ultimate first step of calling out, of the 5 C's, is calling yourself in first. So you actually have to take a deep breath and pause. And I'm telling you, if you've ever parented a teenager, you know how important that one is. Because sometimes if you say the first thing out of your mouth to your children, they'll be in therapy for the rest of their lives. You know this, right? What I find is that the first thought that occurs to my brain is my instinct. The second thought actually is my integrity and my values. So I want to take that deep breath and pause to allow the second thought to come up. Because if I let the first one go, all hell gonna break loose. I know this. And then after you do the self-assessment, the self-assessment means you get to check out, am I feeling hungry or angry or sleep deprived or stressed out and stuff? If you're feeling any of those things, you don't want to call people in or out. Because the reality is that if you're still bleeding from any kind of soul wound, all you're gonna do is bleed all over them. Whether you're trying to do good with the calling in or do harm with the calling out, it ain't gonna work. So calling it off is your best strategy if you're not in that calm emotional space. And then select from the 5 C's, which one is your best strategy. So I'm gonna give you some examples. Like calling on. I'm a boomer, so we can say, I beg your pardon, and then just wait while we look at you like you lost your mind. That works, because I can see people reworking their words in their heads while I'm looking at them like, you might want to check yourself kind of thing. But I do actually like the way young people call on, because they say, are you okay? And with those 3 words, they said, you ain't okay, you need to back out, you need to check yourself, you need to get the fuck out my face, and I don't have anything else to give to you. They said all of that with 3 words. But we can use calling on practices with anybody, but they actually work best if we know the person. One of the things that works really well is when you see somebody doing something problematic, like making a racist or homophobic remark or something like that, and you know them, you can say, you know, Bob, I know you're a great man. I've noticed your kindness. You do all this wonderful stuff. So where's this weird thing that you have that you're just gonna be mean to people you don't even know? Which Bob do I have as a friend? The good Bob or the problematic Bob? What you're doing is calling on them to reconcile those 2 parts of their own personality. You're not calling them in, you're not calling them out. You're asking them to question yourself. Is this the way you want to present to the world? And if not, maybe you should do something about it. And stuff. So these are the kind of things you can do with calling on. Calling in is evidence of your sense of inquiry, your curiosity about people. In other words, oh, somebody says something to you that doesn't land right. You said, you know, I'm not familiar with that perspective. Could you tell me more about it? What that does is validate that everybody has their own lived experiences that inform what they think about things. And by inviting them to share those lived experiences that led to what they said, you will find that you will have built a conversational container instead of a conflict container. Because you've shown that you take their perspectives as seriously as you take your own. And by the way, agreeing to hear somebody doesn't mean you agree to agree with them. You just agree to hear them out. That's what calling in does for us. And by the way, very few people can resist the invitation to tell you more about themselves. I use it for all of my inconvenient pauses. When I can't think what to say, I'll just say, tell me more, while I get myself together. Calling out. Oh, we recognize the outrage. I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe you just misgendered me. I can't believe, that outrage. But we are living in a culture right now where people are becoming what can I say? Professionally outraged. They're walking around looking for an offense at everything. Another online class. You know how you're on Zoom and people don't turn their microphones off? So you're hearing all this background noise bleeding into the conversation. So I basically told the person, I just said to the 200 people, if you're not actively speaking, I need you to mute your microphones. Wouldn't you know, in the middle of a calling in training, somebody spoke up, I can't believe you're using such an ableist word. And I swear, I didn't take my pause. And I said, take it up with Zoom, damn it. I didn't name the damn control. But I regretted that. I'm leading a call-in training, and yet I couldn't call myself in before I came up with this little snarky comment. But I also realized that this was someone looking for a chance to be offended. You know, because the control is called mute yourself. If you got a problem with it, take it up with the Zoom people, not with me. But one of the things I find out about calling out is that it heavily depends on proximity. People feel incapable, powerless to address the actual source of their pain. So they tend to attack the people closest to them who they know won't punch back. Right? So they want to use their friends and their acquaintances and authority figures as their personal therapy space. And I keep telling you, that ain't the purpose of the human rights movement. The human rights movement's job is to end oppression, not to serve as your punching bag because you can't figure out who the hell you are, you know, and how you can be of service to other people. So, you know, sometimes I say, get a therapist, not a keyboard. Something that keyboard can't fix for you. Anyway, calling out. Calling it off. An example of calling it off is, I can't engage with this right now, or it may be, I will never be able to engage this with you, because it can be short-term or long-term, depending on what your self-assessment tells you about where you are. You know, it may be, I don't have the bandwidth for this now, but I can meet with you later over coffee and we can talk about it. Or you can say, I will never have that conversation with you. Now, I do have to say, since we're on Juneteenth, the course that I teach about white supremacy always has about 50 students enrolled in it, which is kind of remarkable for Smith College because most of our classes are 12 to 15 students. We're not U of Michigan. We only have, 1,500 students total. So if I get 50 students, it's a pretty successful class. And yet it's usually 40 to 45 white students, and then the rest are students of color. And so it's not unheard of for the Black students who are in my class to say, I'm really tired of watching these white people, work around white supremacy and figure out who they are in relationship to white supremacy. I think I'm being asked to do involuntary emotional labor. And so my only response I can offer them is that, so you'd rather be around white people that ain't working against white supremacy? It's a kind of binary choice, So you don't want to work around with the people who are trying to fight white supremacy. That leaves you with the people who aren't trying to fight white supremacy and who fully embrace it. Because you can't avoid being around white people, not at a PWI. Right? So which choice you gonna make? And I find it very important when the students raise that legitimate complaint, though, to help them put it in perspective. Here in the 21st century, Black people have the human right to say things to white people that would have gotten my parents and grandparents lynched. Because my mom was born in 1922, my dad in 1918, right? So You can choose not to use the privilege, but you can't fail to acknowledge that you have it. Right? And that's your choice. And another thing that I generally tell the students is that, and this is something I learned from the civil rights movement, so I'm not that smart. This is what they taught us. We have to stop imagining ourselves as the entire chain of freedom, that the whole movement depends on us, because that's not true. The chain of freedom stretches back from our ancestors and stretches forward towards our descendants. That's the entire chain of freedom. The question is, will you break the chain at your link? That's all you have to worry about. Is that chain going to break at your link because you're afraid, you're exhausted by talking about it, you're cynical, you don't think it's going to work? Whatever reason you have for abandoning that privilege, that's what you're actually risking. And so could you live with yourself if you break the chain of freedom at your link by pretending that white supremacy doesn't exist, or pretending that, somehow you get, what did Stevie say? You might have the cash, but you can't cash in your face. That this blindness around how it actually works. So anyway, let me move on because I'm running out of time. And I do want to leave a chance for Q&A. Do you all want a Q&A? Okay. So let's get to the last one, canceling. Canceling is your inner Karen. Oh yeah, I want to speak to your manager, and I'm going to speak to your manager to get you fired. So we have to let go of our inner Karens, or what I would call the inner Trumps. Because it's all based on that crap he did around The Apprentice, that's the power I have to get you fired, blah, blah, blah. And so these are samples of using the calling in framework or the 5C continuum. I'm going to close with talking about why the call-out culture is so pervasive nowadays. And I generally tell this story. Well, first of all, let me tell you about Natalie Wynn. Natalie Wynn is a trans YouTuber who's a celebrity in her podcast called ContraPoint. So I totally recommend that you download, it's for free, her ContraPoints podcast. She's amazingly intellectual, funny. She does all of this costume changes and all kinds of stuff. So you're never bored watching Natalie. But anyway, she did a video analyzing how call-out culture just gets so quickly magnified and goes viral. And so I use her taxonomy in telling this story. Let's imagine that you're at a staff meeting of a social justice organization that's in downtown Detroit, right? At the staff meeting is a white employee named Joe. Joe has just made himself a cup of coffee, and he remarks, ever since I moved from the suburbs to downtown Detroit, I'm suddenly hearing a lot of ambulances and sirens and gunshots, and I can't sleep well because of all that noise. In this same staff meeting is a woman we'll call Patricia. She's Black. She is living in that same gentrifying neighborhood that Joe just moved back into. But the difference between Joe and Patricia is that her family has been there for generations, and now she's the last one left. Because those same gentrifying forces that pulled Joe in pushed Patricia's family out. So-called neutral economic decisions, So Patricia reacts badly to Joe's words. She's like, what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say my neighborhood is dangerous? Ain't nobody invited you here, colonizer. I mean, she just goes off on Joe. And that was a racist thing to say. All hell done broke loose now. Because there's this presumption of guilt. Just by Patricia calling Joe racist, there's this presumption of guilt, right? And it gets so quickly abstracted that it goes from what Joe said was racist into Joe is a racist. That's the essentialist step, right? And Patricia is filled with the pain of losing her family and all the things that are happening, because we always know when a neighbor is getting gentrified, the first Starbucks come, and we know it's all over. If you haven't been victim to those processes, you will. Anyway, and Patricia is taking the moral high ground. Basically, she's on a moral high horse. I know a dog whistle when I hear one. Even though you didn't think that was racist, I know you just made a racist statement. Pseudo-moralistic, pseudo-intellectual. Joe is also taking the moral high ground. I didn't say anything racist. I'm the least racist person you know. I don't have a racist bone in my body. And by the way, would a white man move into a black neighborhood if they were racist? Y'all know a big fucking mess just broke out, right? And both of them are using what Natalie called dualism or false binaries. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm good, you're bad. On and on. I'm great, you're evil. That kind of thing. And Joe and Patricia have fallen into the culture of both unforgivability and unforgettability. Because everywhere those two people go in that organization, there's a chance of like, Joe, Patricia, you gotta walk, she might go off on you, that kind of stuff. And Joe is even further problematized because he says, okay, maybe I did say something that was racist. Let me apologize. Then he's going to be read as offering a fake apology. But then if he says, I didn't say anything racist, I don't have to apologize. Then he's going to be read as avoiding accountability and gaming the system. So he's in a real catch-22. And Patricia, she feels no need to apologize. She is expressing her pain in a way that's not right, but the pain is legitimate. And so then all the other staff members in that meeting now feel that Joe and Patricia have political cooties because they don't want to get in the middle of a big mess. So generally they become bystanders, but bystanders don't mean they don't do anything. What it means is that they're going to get on the Slack channel or on Twitter or something and talk about it, gossip about it. Talk about, well, I wouldn't have said that. Joe is wrong, or I wouldn't have said that. Well, wait a minute. You saw this black employee get attacked at this social justice organization, and y'all didn't come to her defense. I want to signal that I would have defended her. You know, that virtue signaling kind of stuff. Meanwhile, Joe's coffee has not yet gotten cold. That's how the call-out culture happens in our workspaces, in our academic units, all of that. So I'm closing by saying, what we want you to do is recognize these patterns so that you can learn to interrupt them. Don't just let them take off and escalate. Somebody should be able to say, whoa, wait a minute. We care about everybody, Joe and Patricia. Let's talk about what's going on right now. And stuff. So I'm going to say thank you all for listening to me, and it's like time for some Q&A.
Thank you so much. You have given us so much to think about and so much great guidance. If you have questions for Professor Ross, please raise your hand. You were given cards if you wanted to write down questions, and LaTanya will walk around and collect those. If you have a question and you don't have a card, raise your hand and we can get a card to you. But as I wait for those questions to make the stage, I'll use my privilege as chair of the program to ask the questions I want to ask. So my first question for you is, as we think about these behaviors that you just outlined for us to adopt, to practice as we want to engage people, oftentimes in difficult conversations? How do we utilize those behaviors within a group dynamic? For instance, our student speaker highlighted how the Black Student Union has been working with our administration over and over again to achieve certain goals, and oftentimes they meet a stalling situation, or they feel like they're being ignored, or things aren't moving forward. And oftentimes in that situation, you feel frustrated, feel the only option is to call out. So how do you engage those type of dynamics, and what behaviors do you, or how do you utilize the behaviors that you outlined for us?
I believe there are important uses of the call out culture. So I'm not denying that call outs are never to be used. The things that are appropriate to be called out is when people are abusing their power over other people, when people have been asked and given an opportunity to change and choose not to, when people are causing more harm that they don't want to be accountable for. Call out culture helps identify sites of harm, for example, that people may not have known. You know, this requirement means that no Black people get hired, kind of thing. It identifies those sites of harm, and it builds community out of those people getting harmed by lifting the voices of the silence. So there are appropriate and inappropriate uses of call outs. Now, back to your earlier question, I feel that it's important for groups to create a calling in culture ahead of need. And so you can do it through establishing calling in group agreements, for example. Talk a whole lot about mistakes and forgiveness, because it's inevitable. When human beings work together, they're gonna make they're messy, we're messy. So we're gonna make a lot of mistakes. So in advance of need, talk about how we're gonna handle those mistakes, how we're gonna learn to forgive each other, how we can hold ourselves accountable, those kinds of things. And also in a calling in culture, there's a lot of different roles people can play. You could be the healer, helping a person who just got victimized, or you could be the truth finder, finding out the facts of the case. Like they could have used a truth finder with Joe and Patricia, you know, in that moment. They could have said, wait a moment, was this objectively racist or not, kind of thing. Or the witness. There's a whole lot of things you could do. All of this stuff is in my book, by the way. So maybe I come back and do a book signing for y'all in February.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot that you can do. The thing that I'm concerned about, though, is that people think of the calling out as their tactic of first resort. No, calling out should only be used, like we do in the human rights movement, as the tactic of last resort. It's the break glass in case of emergency resort. You first try talking to the people. If you're not effective talking to them, you find an effective messenger to talk to them. There's a dozen things you can do before you invite somebody into a public fight. Because once you invited them to that public fight, y'all ain't trying to compromise at that point, y'all trying to win. And you're gonna win by any means necessary. And so I tend to counsel people not to assume that people with power are by definition your enemy. That's our trauma showing up. And 64% of the American public has been traumatized as children. You know, they suffer what they call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, which is neglect, violence, or abuse. And so that's 2/3 of the American population. And so, of course, 2/3 of that people in this room are going to be operating from trauma. The real question is, has that trauma been addressed or healed, or is it still in the driver's seat in terms of how you react to conflict and authority and all of those things? But people who have been abused by power are going to be the quickest one to attack people with power because they haven't healed their trauma.
Thank you. And I have one more question. And I think you answered it in part, but I want to be very explicit in asking the question so you can be explicit in giving the answer. The University of Michigan, like many campuses across our country right now, have been rocked by the Israel-Gaza conflict and are in a stance where both sides have canceled each other. How do you move forward when the conflict has gone very divisive and you have reached a point where cancellation has happened on both sides?
Um, I think the Israel-Gaza conflict is very unique. It's not, it can't be easily compared to any other conflicts. But I would say as a Black person who definitely believes in the power of changing society, that we really might need to learn some lessons from other people, like maybe Black people, and how you don't turn into your enemy to defeat them. And that, to me, is of tremendous concern, because you can fight the right fight in the wrong way. And then next thing you know, you're turning into the very thing that you call yourself critiquing. That means you've lost the room, you've lost the message, and it's more about power than purpose, which is a real dangerous thing. Now, I teach about anti-Semitism routinely in my class, so I'm probably the professor at my campus best equipped to handle the Israel-Gaza situation, because it's not exceptional to talk about it. I teach about Holocaust denial and slavery denial and all of those things as part of my routine syllabus. So I was in a very privileged position in order to build a container that held the conflicting stories together. But I had to very carefully do so without revealing where my sentiments are and stuff. But it's very possible to do.
And I think we'll take one more question before we have to end. And it's a very interesting question, perhaps inspired by one of the coaches of the basketball finals that just happened. But the question is, how do you respond or call out persons of color who push white supremacist narratives through talking points, such as, I am Christian before I am a Black man or woman, or my Christian identity is more important than my racial identity?
Well, there's all kinds of white supremacy denial out here, isn't there? And I try to educate people on how it shows up. Again, the fundamental lesson of my white supremacy class is to teach students the difference between whiteness as an identity and white supremacy as an ideology. And the reality is that not all people who have a white identity are white supremacists, and sadly, not all white supremacists are white. I mean, Clarence Thomas, anybody? You know? And so until you make that necessary separation of things that get conflated, then you're working from a platform of understanding people's white identities are just like a Black identity, an Asian identity. It's just a damn identity, and they made up all this crap anyway. But that's not what you fight against. You fight against ideological whiteness. Not identity whiteness. I mean, that's like fighting against identity Blackness. I mean, what? It's all made up. Race is a fiction, racism is real. So this is what we have to deal with. And so, but I always want to do it with love. In my course, one of the last modules I teach is called Appropriate Whiteness. And the reason I even came up with this concept is back in the 90s when I was monitoring hate groups, whenever the hate group came to town, we had ended up with 3 sets of white people. The white people who were usually young and male who wanted to punch a Nazi. So they were the ones, showing up to overwhelm them and punch them, right? Not useful, because that, of course, ended up with bad optics, where the Klan were seen as the victims. That ain't helpful. And then there was the largest group, the middle group, that said, let me just board up the windows and stay at home that day and pretend this will all go away. So they were the people in total denial, right? But they felt that if they drew attention to what the Nazis or the Klan were doing, that they would be giving the publicity that they wanted anyway. The third group of white people say, I don't want to practice violence and I don't want to ignore them, so what should I do? And it's that third group I created the concept of appropriate whiteness. Because there's a way to use this made-up white identity in the service of fighting white supremacy. And let me close with an example that you'll all recognize. Do y'all remember when those two black men got racially profiled at that Starbucks? Y'all remember that story? They were just sitting there waiting for a friend, business meeting, and a Karen probably called the police on them. Do y'all know why you know that story? Because a white woman, repurposing her white identity, pulled out her cell phone and recorded it and put it out there and said, "This shall not be done in my name." That's what you call repurposing your white identity with pride, as opposed to letting the white pride only belong to the Nazis. You know, where you become self-determining about what your identity is. And you can self-determine around all aspects of your identity. Isn't that why we're talking about, genderqueer and all this other stuff? People are choosing to live their truth and define their own identities for themselves. And that's what I invite people to do with appropriate whiteness. So thanks for the question. And thank y'all for listening. Thank you.